Stop. Before you scroll. Before you skip ahead. Before that voice in your head tells you this isn't for you. Just stay here. For a moment. With me. You didn't find this video by accident. You found it because something in you has been searching. Not for entertainment. Not for distraction. For something real. For someone who actually sees what you've been carrying. And I need you to know, from the very first breath of this video, before we go anywhere else together, I see you. Not the version of you that smiles when you're supposed to smile. Not the version that replies "I'm fine" on autopilot. The real you. The one who lies awake at 3 in the morning, wondering if any of this even matters. The one who has felt, more times than you can count, like you were built for something much bigger than the life you're currently living, and couldn't explain why. That feeling is not delusion. That feeling is data. And today, in this video, we are going to talk about exactly what that feeling means, exactly what has been happening inside of you, beneath the surface, and exactly why. Certain people, certain systems, and certain voices around you has been quietly, sometimes unconsciously, hoping you never woke up to any of it. Stay with me. This is going to be one of the most important conversations you've ever had with yourself. Let me ask you something, and I want you to actually answer this in your own mind, not just pass over it. Have you ever felt like you were too much and not enough at the exact same time? Too intense for some people, too quiet for others, too deep for casual conversation, too dreamy for the practical world, but also somehow never quite arriving at the version of yourself you always knew was possible. Have you ever watched the people around you move through life with what looks like ease, choosing careers, building routines, laughing at ordinary things, and felt this quiet, almost guilty ache because you couldn't quite do the same? Not because you were lazy, not because you didn't care, but because something in you refused to settle. You are not broken. You were never broken. What you have been experiencing, that restlessness, that longing, that sense of being out of place, is one of the most well-documented patterns in the psychology of highly sensitive, deeply self-aware individuals. Researchers call it overexcitability. Therapists call it intensity. Philosophers call it the examined life. I call it the signal. The signal that you were not designed for the surface, that you were built to go deeper, that the discomfort you've been carrying is not a glitch, it is a compass. And here's what no one tells you about that compass. It doesn't just point toward purpose in some abstract, inspirational poster kind of way. It points toward you. Toward the most authentic, most powerful, most fully realized version of you that exists. The version you have been circling for years without quite landing. And the closer you get to that version, the more awake you become, the more threatened the world around you seems to get. We are going to talk about that. We are going to talk about all of it. Before you got here, before you were sitting in front of this screen with whatever weight you're carrying today, there was a breaking point. Maybe it happened all at once. A relationship that shattered. A career that collapsed. A morning you woke up and looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the life looking back at you. Maybe it happened slowly, a quiet erosion, a decade of saying yes when you meant no, of shrinking, of fitting yourself into spaces that were never built for you. Either way, something broke. And I am here to tell you that breaking was the beginning. In psychology, there is a concept called post-traumatic growth. The research behind it, pioneered by psychologists Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun, documents something profound, that the experience of being shattered, genuinely, deeply shattered, is often the precondition for the most profound and lasting personal transformation a human being can undergo. Not the breakdown as some poetic metaphor. The actual psychological and neurological process by which the old structure of your identity gets stripped away, painfully, sometimes terrifyingly, and something more honest, more solid, more true, begins to build in its place. And here is the part that no one warns you about. The part that makes the breaking phase so disorienting. When you are in it, when everything feels unstable, when your old stories about who you are and what you deserve and what's possible no longer hold, it does not feel like growth. It feels like failure. It feels like punishment. It feels, in your darkest moments, like proof that you were never cut out for any of this. But what is actually happening, beneath the surface of all that pain, is a process of necessary demolition. Your nervous system, your subconscious, your deepest psychological architecture, all of it is letting go of the false scaffolding you built to survive your earliest wounds. The people-pleasing, the self-silencing, the compulsive performing, the endless shrinking to make others comfortable. It is being dismantled, not by accident, not by cruelty, by growth. And you made it through. You are here. That is not a small thing. That is extraordinary. So let me ask you this. In the past season of your life, however long that season has been, have you noticed yourself changing in ways you can't quite explain? Have you noticed that the things that used to distract you no longer do? That you find yourself reaching less for numbing and more for truth? That conversations that once felt normal now feel shallow, and you're no longer willing to pretend otherwise? Have you noticed that your tolerance for your own inauthenticity has shrunk? That when you try to play a role that isn't really you, your body reacts. Tightness in the chest, a flatness in the voice, a fatigue that no amount of sleep can fix? Have you felt yourself pulling away from certain people, not with anger, but with a quiet recognition that those connections were built on a version of you that no longer exists? If you answered yes to any of that, you are not losing yourself. You are finding yourself. These are the signs. These are the markers of a psyche that is reorganizing itself around something real instead of something safe. And they can feel, in the middle of the process, like loss, like grief, because in many ways, they are. You are grieving the false self. You are mourning the identity you performed for years, because it was what the world seemed to want from you. And here is what the research tells us about that grief. People who allow themselves to fully feel and process the loss of their false self, rather than bypassing it, rather than performing positivity they don't actually feel those. People emerge with a depth of identity that is almost impossible to shake. Psychologist Carl Rogers called this the move from the adapted self to the organismic self. The self that is no longer responding to external demands, but actually living from the inside out. You are in that move, even if it doesn't feel clean, even if it doesn't feel graceful. You are in the most important transition of your entire life. And the people who are terrified of that, we're getting to them. Now I want to talk about why they're terrified. Not out of conspiracy, not as some dramatic accusation, but as a simple, honest, psychologically grounded truth about human systems and the people within them. When you are asleep, when you are defined, contained, predictable, you are manageable. You fit into the ecosystem of expectations that other people have built for themselves and for you. You show up the way you're supposed to show up. You need the things you're supposed to need. You confirm the stories other people are telling about the world and about themselves. And then you wake up. and suddenly their entire ecosystem is destabilized. Not because you've done anything wrong, not because you've become difficult or arrogant or unloving, but because you are no longer playing the role you were unconsciously assigned. And the people around you, the ones who benefited from your smallness, your agreeableness, your willingness to absorb their discomfort, they don't necessarily know why they feel threatened. They just know something has shifted. And they reach for control. Sometimes it looks like criticism. You've changed. You're not who you used to be. Who do you think you are? Sometimes it looks like distance, people pulling away without explanation because your growth makes their stagnation visible and they can't sit with that. Sometimes it looks like ridicule. You're taking yourself too seriously. You always did think you were special. Here is what I need you to hear very clearly. Their reaction to your growth is information about them. It is not instruction for you. In the psychology of attachment and differentiation, one of the most reliably documented phenomena is this. When one person in a relational system begins to individuate, begins to develop a clearer, more boundaried, more authentic sense of self, the system often responds with pressure to return to the previous state. This is called systemic homeostasis. It is not personal. It is not evidence that you are wrong. It is evidence that you are growing faster than the system can accommodate. And here is the most important thing I can tell you about that. You do not have to shrink back to make them comfortable. Their comfort was never your responsibility. It just felt like it was, because somewhere along the way, probably very early, you learned that being loved was conditional on being small. That was a lie, and you are finally, beautifully, done believing it. You figured it out. That is what terrifies them. Not your ambition, not your dreams, your clarity, your refusal to pretend, your growing inability to live from the outside in. You figured it out. Now comes the part that requires something from you. Because understanding what has happened to you and understanding why the world reacted the way it did is only half of the equation. The other half is choosing, consciously, deliberately, in the full knowledge of the cost, to keep going anyway. And I'm not going to sugarcoat this. That choice is not easy. It is arguably one of the most demanding things a human being can do. Because keeping going means tolerating the discomfort of being misunderstood. It means sitting inside the uncertainty of who you are becoming without the false comfort of who you used to be. It means grieving relationships that cannot come with you. It means building a life from the inside out when everything in the culture around you is designed to pull you back to the surface. But here is what I also know. Here is what the psychology of courage and self-determination theory and every honest account of a life fully lived confirms. The alternative, choosing to go back to sleep, to shrink again, to readopt the false self because it's safer, because it keeps the peace, because it stops the questions. That choice is not neutral. That choice carries its own cost. A cost paid slowly, invisibly, in a currency called your life. And you have already spent enough of your life in that currency. You have paid enough. It is time to receive. The courage I'm talking about is not the Hollywood version. It's not dramatic. It's not loud. It's the quiet, daily, almost unremarkable choice to be honest, to say what's true, to rest when you're supposed to rest, to speak when silence would be easier, to choose again and again the path that feels like you, even when the path that doesn't feel like you would be so much more convenient. That is the courage of self-actualization. And it is available to you right now. Not when you feel ready, not when things calm down, not when you have more certainty about where you're going. Right now, as you are. You don't need their permission. You never did. I want to close with something I mean with every part of this conversation. You came into this world with something in you that the world has been trying to reshape ever since. Not out of malice, usually. Out of fear, out of the discomfort your brightness creates in people who have forgotten their own. Out of systems that were designed for conformity and never knew what to do with someone like you. And you, through all of it, you kept carrying the light. Even when you didn't know that's what you were doing. Even when you called it anxiety, or confusion, or failure, or loneliness. Even then, the light was there, waiting for you to stop apologizing for it. The awakening you are in the middle of right now is not a destination. There is no morning you wake up and suddenly everything is resolved, every wound is healed, every answer is clear. That is not what growth looks like. Growth looks like you, exactly as you are tonight, choosing, one more time, to be honest, to be here, to refuse to disappear. The people who are terrified you figured it out? They are afraid because they can see it in you, even if they can't name it. They can see that you are becoming someone who cannot be managed, cannot be dimmed, cannot be permanently contained by anyone else's fear of your potential. And that awareness, that quiet, unshakable clarity about who you are and what you will no longer accept, is worth every uncomfortable conversation, every sleepless night, every moment of grief and confusion and radical uncertainty you have walked through to get here. You are not lost. You are arriving. And the world, the real world, the one that is waiting for the fully alive version of you, is not afraid of you at all. It has been waiting, with patience, with open arms, waiting for the version of you that no longer asks permission to exist. That version is already you. It has always been you. You are just now, finally, willing to believe it. If something in this video moved you, if you heard something in here that felt like it was meant specifically for you, I want you to know that it was. That is not an accident. That is what this channel exists for. Last Call for the Chosen is not about hype. It is not about easy answers or quick fixes or motivational noise. It is about these conversations. The ones that meet you where you actually are, not where you're supposed to be, not where you're pretending to be, but where you actually are. If you are not subscribed yet, I want to invite you to become part of this community. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on your notifications, not because I'm asking you to feed an algorithm, but because the content we release here is the kind of content that arrives exactly when you need it. And I don't want you to miss it when it does. If this video helped you, share it. Not to promote this channel, share it, because you know someone who needed to hear exactly what you just heard. Someone who is lying awake, feeling like they're too much and not enough, wondering if the life they feel called to is really possible. Give them this. It costs you nothing, and it could change everything for them. Leave a comment below. Tell me what part of this video hit you the hardest. Tell me what you're walking through right now. This community reads those words. I read those words. You will not be speaking into silence. I'll see you in the next one. And until then, keep going. Keep being exactly, unapologetically, magnificently you. This was your last call, and you answered it.